just thinking, do any of the Sixers coaches over the last couple of years, have they liked young players and allowing them to contribute to the season and maybe do some things and show that they can play, not named Ben Simmons or Markelle Fultz, of course? Have the young players been able to be a part of the Sixers' success during the regular season over the last couple of years?
Well, Brett didn't have a choice.
He didn't have a choice.
Hinkie didn't give him any veterans, so he had to play young players.
I mean, when they became decent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, Ben Simmons was the number 1 overall pick. Markelle Fultz, you play him. Got that. Matisse Thybulle, the same thing. That's something that we need to discuss here today as we get ready for the start of the season. Of course, still a ways away, but a conversation that needs to be had here on PHLY Sixers Podcast, along with Derek Bodner, Kyle Neubeck. I'm Devon Givens. Brianna is producing all of you in the chat. As always, of course, we appreciate it. And as the Rico Hines runs are going crazy, we're seeing the young players out there getting some work in, and kind of prompted us to discuss a little further in detail of if these young players will have a role in this upcoming season for Nick Nurse's second year on his deal with this group. And looking at some of the players, we've talked about Ricky Council and Jared McCain, of course, being drafted, Adem Bona also. There are a few others, though, that we need to discuss, and just wondering if there could be a possibility that they have a chance to compete and be a part of a winning Sixers season this year with all of these veterans on the roster. And Derek, starting off with you as we look at these guys, and Ricky Council is one that I brought up the other day in the buy and sell conversation that we had, but there are so many others that we need to discuss. And starting with you, man, how do you feel, just overview first, of the young players on this team as a whole?
Yeah, well, I think where I'd start is really you're talking about 3 young players who you think have realistic chances of being contributors, whether this year or long term. Bona, which you mentioned, Ricky Council, and McCain. And I like all 3 of them. Not sure I necessarily love any one of them. But if you're asking me whether or not there's a high chance of any one of them contributing early on, the answer is probably not. And that's for a couple of reasons. First of all, for Bona and McCain, they have fit concerns where their physical profile and or skill set makes it tough for them to fit with the team's 2 tentpole stars. So when you're talking about Bona, it's tough to put him alongside Joel Embiid. That's going to limit his opportunity. He's also got Andre Drummond in front of him, so that right there limits his chances. And with McCain, it's just tough to pair him next to Tyrese Maxey, especially in the short term as a 6'2" guard. His offense, to justify the defensive concerns, would have to be incredible. And I think early on, it's going to take McCain some time to learn the tricks of the trade on both sides of the floor. And as he's learning that, he just doesn't have all that much, there's not much wiggle room. There's not much margin for error because of that fit concern. The one guy who has the physical profile where you can put him on the floor right now is Ricky Council. Mm-hmm. And I think because of that, he is the most likely to contribute. He's also, I think, the furthest along, just being physically able to compete, having the body and the strength of a veteran, and having the defensive versatility he has. There's fewer question marks on what he has to prove to get on the floor. So I think of those 3, Council is the one I think has the best chance. I do think, we just talked about this the other day, I do think there will be periods of the year where he will get on the floor. But in terms of being a consistent everyday contributor, I'm not sure I see that from the jump. And whether or not he will be by the time the playoffs roll around largely depends on how much progress he has made over the summer on that jumper, and what he can show over the course of the regular season.
Yeah, so if we're looking at what we've seen from Jared McCain in Summer League, some of what we can project based on what we saw at Duke, and then, I don't know how seriously you guys take the Rico Hines runs that we see the footage from. And I would say this, if you compare the footage from those games to, Drew League, right, the Rumpf, settings like that where it becomes a lot of, it's just one-on-one, it's a different type of basketball. And that's not to say it's worse, but I think there's a lot more structure during those runs. And so you can see at least a little bit about okay, what can this guy do? Maybe what are his weaknesses? Knowing that we're only seeing a small portion of what's happening inside these gyms. I think everything I saw there basically reflects what we saw out in Vegas and in Utah, which is Jared is a confident shooter. He's a guy that's going to be his job at this level in the short term, maybe even the long term, although I think we would all hope that eventually he'll probably get to a place where he can run a backup unit at the very least, like be in that Kyle Lowry, Reggie Jackson type role off the bench, be at minimum the understudy to Tyrese Maxey. The areas that he's lacking in right now, unfortunately, are directly connected to that type of position, right? So I don't think he's a particularly advanced ball handler. I don't think he has great burst, first step type of stuff. And that's going to make it hard for him to put pressure on the rim. It'll make it hard for him to create passing lanes for himself. And I do think he's got good passing vision. I think when you see him make the connective passes, I think it was something that DeAnthony Melton was really good at. I think McCain is good in a similar way, where if he catches the ball, for example, around the elbow, he can make one of those quick extra passes to the corner, maybe even hit one over the top to the weak side. So he's good at that stuff. Defensively, it's just like, who can he actually play in next to? And a lot of that's going to depend on, how are Maxey's minutes managed? How do they use those other two backup guards? But also, where is Eric Gordon in terms of the pecking order in their rotation? And how does everything else shake out? So the shot is his ticket to playing time. You hope that he can rebound a little bit, because he has been a good rebounder throughout his amateur career. And everything else I would consider basically a bonus this year. Like, I think long term, you hope that he can be a good defender, but even a smart kid, someone who puts a lot of prep time in, they struggle as rookies. There are very few guys who are even competent, average as defenders as rookies, especially not guards who are his size. So I think he has an uphill path. I think it'd be pretty surprising to me if he played anything more than like a bit role on this team this year. But they didn't draft him to be a guy this year. They drafted him because they believe in the shot, they believe in the long-term upside, and the character, we'll call them green flags, are all there, right? Like, people rave about him in the weight room, rave about him in terms of the film prep. He hired a sports psychologist before going to Duke to like just prepare for the mental side of the game going into. So I think he's someone that shows the foresight to know, I'm going to put myself in as advantageous a position as possible. That's one of the only reasons I would say maybe he does have a chance to get in there this year and exceed our expectations.
Well, if he does, like you said, they are going to hunt him down on the defensive end and try to take advantage of him. And they should, because he's a smaller guy. While he has a strong base in general, he still has a lot to learn in the league, and they're going to try to exploit that and take advantage of that weakness as part of his game. But as you just mentioned, as both of you have talked about with McCain, now we know the whole thing is about him getting on the floor with the shooting. Is there a spot with him on the floor with the shooting, and who is out there with him, as Kyle mentioned? Eric Gordon, sure. Is he going to get an opportunity to be there with Joel Embiid? He talked about it on the Paul George podcast that we brought up briefly yesterday, Derek, where he said it to Paul George. Yeah, I know I'm going to have to find my spots and make the shots playing off of you and playing off of Embiid and Maxey. The question is, what is he going to do? Is he going to light up training camp so good that he's going to get an opportunity to do so? Is he going to show out well in those preseason games where Nick Nurse is not going to have much of a choice but to give him an opportunity to get out there and shoot? And that's what's going to get him on the floor. Keep protecting the basketball, playing with this high basketball IQ, making those connected passes that you mentioned, and just simply making those shots. The problem is, as we talk about, can some of these young players help out? He has Kyle Lowry, Reggie Jackson, along with Tyrese Maxey, Eric Gordon directly in front of him, and that gives him a big-time uphill battle of finding any kind of minutes on the floor.
Yeah, and look, Daryl Morey at the post-draft presser was pretty candid that like he doesn't expect much from rookies, especially mid-round rookies. Part of that is probably just setting expectations. Like, you don't want him to come out and if he struggles to get on the floor, for him to feel like he's a failure. Like, if he comes out and he's riding the bench, if he feels like this is all part of the plan and normal, then you take that a little bit easier. But I am a little bit curious because, look, shooting is of the utmost value around the league, especially on Joel Embiid-based teams. Those minutes when Maxey's on the bench and Joel's on the floor, if he can find a rhythm and at least make the right decisions defensively, even if he cannot compete defensively like you would want him to, if he can make those shots. And we talked about it at the time of the Summer League. I wrote an article about it. I trust his shot. It might take a little bit of adjustment because it is deeper, because the closeouts are quicker, the athletes are better, but I think he will find a way. If he finds a way early on in the season, I am curious to see how he would look in those Embiid minutes with Maxey on the bench, because that kind of a quick trigger shot is just so valuable for Joe.
Oh, it really is. And seeing it up close and seeing how they make him work, Rico Hines being a part of that with the training at Summer League and having him go through that. We just kept watching it. You were filming, watching him go through those same drills, especially the one right there in that corner where he would come up from the corner, pop right there up to the wing. And they made sure, even on the screen, that he wasn't at the 3-point line. He was a few feet behind the 3-point line because these guys close out, and they close out very fast in the NBA. They're very quick. Not to mention, now we're talking about a much deeper shot where they're trying to work on from his collegiate days to where he is now and trying to get him used to that much deeper NBA 3-point shot because, again, you cannot run into the line right into the defense. You just can't. Not in today's game unless you're wide open and you're in transition, you find your spot, you boom. That's
loves
fine.
And is very good at that transition three. Where if he does get minutes, you're going to see a lot of those, whether he dribbles into it himself or Maxey, Lowry, Reggie Jackson, whoever, he's filling a lane for one of them. That shot will go up because he is ultra confident in that transition three.
I think that one is the one that we kept seeing them running him through over and over and over again because it's going to be against some longer defenders. Those guys know his profile, and then he's going to be his scouting report early is going to be, do not let him get a good shot off. Don't let him get a good look, and that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to try to take that away.
And look, this team with Martin, with Paul George, who's incredible at forcing deflections, they could really get out there and run. Both with Joel Embiid, I know he specifically is not going to run.
I'd say mostly without him, though.
But, I mean, it does, you don't need 5 players filling a lane per se. You need to get a stop first. Joel Embiid helps perimeter defenders be more aggressive. If that can ignite the break and help McCain out to get those shots in transition, because Kyle mentioned it, he is borderline elite at that already at this age. I think that's a way to get him some pretty clean, easy looks to help get him going and help keep him on the floor. It's
crazy, honestly, when you go and just watch all his attempts, how many of them are that shot. Anytime Duke will get a stop.
His footwork is just...
Yes. And so look, when your mechanics hold up in that type of scenario, right, where sometimes it's him off the dribble in transition, where you're trying to push the pace, you're going full steam ahead, and you have to hit the brakes hard, get the defender to, keep moving backward, and then rise up quickly. So to see his mechanics hold up there is probably it's part of what gives you supreme confidence he's going to be a very good shooter over the long term. So, we'll see. The theme of today's show will most likely be, we don't really expect many of these guys to play in general, but I do think Jared will give himself a chance. I think his unique skill is one that is always valuable, but is certainly valuable on this team with Joel Embiid and even with Andre Drummond. Once he's on the floor, and you do have a rim-bound big, all the spacing that you can get otherwise is going to help, the Maxies, the Paul Georges, create those driving lanes. And as you bring up the deeper threes, the shots that he's working on with Rico out in Vegas, and I'm sure, at UCLA and other places, one of the reasons that I'm bullish on how much Eric Gordon is going to play is specifically because he is good at and confident at taking those 30-foot type of threes. He will just be a standstill guy from 30 feet and feel great about it. That's something that is not ultra common around the league. It's becoming more common that guys are taking shots out there. But Eric Gordon, having played for a Morey run team, he's coming here, and I can almost guarantee you that when Daryl talked to him and his representation coming into free agency, I could almost guarantee that there are some, hey, we just want you bombing 30-footers. We want you to keep as much space as is humanly possible between you and Joel Embiid in the middle of the floor. And so if that applies to Eric Gordon, it damn sure applies to Jared McCain, who at least in the short term is probably going to play a similar role where it's just you take a lot of threes and that's your job.
Need to figure out what Ryan Anderson is doing these days. The OG 30-foot three-point bombing goat.
Speaking of, did you see... I don't know whose account it is. Somebody on NBA Twitter has been posting these doctored videos where it's all black and white.
On Twitter, that would never happen.
No, you can't. They're all black and white, and you can't tell who the player is. And it's you're not a real NBA head unless you know who this is. One of them was Ryan Anderson, and people had no idea until it was revealed because he was taking mid-post fadeaways. He's taking guys off the dribble. And I think people obviously remember when Ryan Anderson was just shooting 10 threes a game, right? And bombing away. But he had some stuff to his game on offense. He had absolutely nothing on defense, but
he could get
that's
away
not
with
why
it
he got paid.
at
So
what, 6'9", so he could get away with it because
when you're that size
height.
and can shoot.
Yeah, he could fire it away, man, and he sure did. So I guess when we look at this and we talk about Jared McCain, we'll get to a couple of the other guys again in just a bit. But looking at him, I'm guessing he's going to spend a lot of time with the Delaware Bluecoats and getting some run in there, getting some good minutes, some good run with the Delaware Bluecoats, and seeing how he continues to develop and working on everything with the coaching staff down in Delaware, bringing them back up with the big team, getting some practices in there early, and just logging a lot of minutes in Delaware, basically.
Yeah, no, and I think that'll be good for him. Like, I think that's a good place to go down there. Those might not be the most polished players in the world, but they do have size, they do have speed, more than he would have seen in college, and obviously the line, and learn the systems and learn where you can fit in. I think, look, we can sit here and say we don't expect much from most of these guys on the regular roster. That doesn't mean that this season isn't crucially important for all three of them, and that we can't follow up throughout the year and see what kind of progress they have made. And I think the G League is one spot where they can.
We'll talk about the other two in just a bit when we get back on the other side, and the others a little bit later here on the PHLY Sixers podcast. And as we talk about these young players and their stats and minutes played and all of that, we also have to get you ready for the football season that is just before basketball season, and that is what our good friends from Bet Parks Sportsbook. Pro football and the Bird season is next Friday. Next Friday for the Birds. There's a Thursday game as well to kick off the 24 campaign in the Professional Football League. And the one and only sportsbook app that I ever recommend is the Bet Parks app, and the Bet Parks Sportsbook app, an online casino, has a great offer for new customers to kick off the upcoming pro football season. An amazing 50-1 odds boost on your pick to win this year's pro football championship. There's a lot of buzz out there, of course, for the repeat champion of Kansas City. A lot of buzz there for the up-and-coming Houston football team. How about Detroit as well in the National Football Conference? There are a lot of different ways that it seems that some of those people are starting to lean that way. And if you feel good, particularly about one, Bet Parks Sportsbook app is the way to go. And all new users who do sign up, make a deposit, receive a 50-1 super odds boost, BetParks.com has all the terms and conditions. Get odds boost to 50-1. Yes, 50-1 odds. Here are the 6 favorites to win the Pro Football Championship this upcoming season. I already mentioned Kansas City, Detroit. How about San Fran, Baltimore, Cincinnati, and yes, your Philadelphia team is already on that list.
Missing.
They are there. Download the Bet Parks Sportsbook and online casino app right now and get your 50-1 super odds boost on your pick for this year's Pro Football Champion. This is a limited time offer for new customers only. BetParks.com has terms and conditions. You must be 21 and live in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Michigan, or Maryland. You play for fun. You love to win. You bet. Bet Parks. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
We've also got to tell you about Rite Aid. You've probably heard me sneeze once or twice already in this show.
It's everybody's favorite segment. Derek talking about histamine.
Where are the tissues, man? Get the tissues.
That is not a coincidence. Fall allergies can begin as early as August and last into November. Main culprits are ragweed and mold, with other allergens such as plants, dust mites, and pet dander, and fur also possibilities. Allergic reactions occur when your body misidentifies a substance, such as pollen, as harmful to the body, and then your immune system releases histamines to fight off allergens. Those same histamines are also the cause of your allergy symptoms, such as a runny nose, itchy or watery eyes, or wheezing. That's why antihistamines, medication that suppresses the amount of histamine in your body, are often the first line of defense to treating your allergy symptoms. Here's what you can do to get relief during allergy season. Sign up for Rite Aid Rewards emails at riteaid.com/rewards to receive email pollen alerts for your area. Use a dehumidifier. Shower frequently, especially at night after you've been out all day. Check pollen counts on your weather app of choice and keep windows closed and use an air conditioner. Here are some over-the-counter options available at your local Rite Aid. A nasal rinse to help flush out your nasal passages. When symptoms flare up, try the antihistamines we talked about earlier. And in order to be proactive, 1 to 2 weeks before pollen allergies are expected to be high, try a nasal corticosteroid. If that's still not enough relief, you can always ask your Rite Aid pharmacist for recommendations on ways to get relief during allergy season.
And I see Bree in there doing some work where we have some folks asking about the hat that I have on, Derek's hat, Kyle's T-shirt, asking about the merchandise.
All right, here's
of course.
Here's a test, Devon.
And
can you get the URL?
Yes, because I have it right in front of me. Store.allcitynetwork.com/collections/PHLY-locker. It's a long one. Bree says she's going to post it, which she did right there in the chat for everybody else. But again, store.allcitynetwork.com/collections/PHLY-
You could also
locker.
just end it at the .com, and you're all smart enough to find the
Click on the
PHLY section.
Click on the
right?
logo, which you can see because we're wearing it
Just
on our hats.
try to pass it along. But yes, go check it out if you want any of the merchandise that we have on PHLY Locker. Some pretty cool stuff in there. And we hope that you do go ahead and get it. When you do get it, let us know that you do have some pieces. Like when we saw Val at the Danny Rum Classic.
That's right.
We ran
were
into
wearing
Val.
these matching red shirts that I have on today.
Yep. So please go ahead and, as Jay of the Jungle says, sign up. The Die Hard program. Go ahead, become a member, and we got you covered. So we appreciate that. All right, Kyle, speaking of Jared McCain, we talked about him mostly for the first part, but the one, as we always discuss and is part of our show for fun, we mentioned him a little bit earlier in the week, but we can talk about him a little extensively here, and that's Ricky.
Yes.
Changed the number from 16 to 14. Coach Caleb Martin came in and took it, but Ricky was cool giving up the number. He's number 14 now, and a lot of the same things we saw from last season that really got us backing Ricky Council and for fun wanting to see him out on the floor. And he did some stuff to really warrant some of those minutes that we thought were worthy of Nick Nurse giving him some minutes. Hell, we were calling for him even in the postseason because they needed some energy in that New York
Just
Knicks,
something
some
different.
rebounding, whatever it was. We just needed to see Ricky out there. But this is a good test for him. He was rewarded at the end of the season with a contract, and he got the 4-year contract, not all guaranteed, but he got the deal working as an undrafted player. And he's one that not only us, but a lot of the fan base, and I don't think it's just us bringing him up, it's because of his play, wanting to see more of Ricky Council on the floor.
Yeah. So I think the tougher thing for Ricky this year is that he's far from the only athlete on the roster anymore, right? I think last year, I don't want to say there were no athletes on the roster. Like Kelly was there and he's still here. He's going to play a big role. But there was really a dearth of like actual wings to play minutes for this team. Now you're looking at a team that we're expecting Kelly Oubre to start. We're expecting Caleb Martin to start. You have Yabusele's more of a forward, but he's like a big body, 6'7", 6'8" type of guy coming in with physicality and athleticism. You still have KJ Martin. You have Ricky. Like there's a good group of guys. And oh, by the way, Paul George is one of your 3 best players on the team and is now going to play, 32, 36, 38 minutes a game, depending on, the type of team that they're playing. And so opportunities for wing minutes are slimmer than they were last year when he's playing at times during an injury crisis. So, we'll see where Ricky fits into all this because he isn't as different as he was last year. Now, here's the good news. I think we saw skill development from him last year. He came into the league with plenty to his game on offense, right? Good ball handler. He's got an NBA frame, so he was able to finish through contact. I think that's something we saw consistently last year. I think if you look at him at Summer League, we saw him up close. You look at these Rico Hines runs, he certainly looks like he's taking care of his body this summer, has gotten a little bit bigger up top, so he's going to be able to absorb contact. You would hope that helps him as a driver, as a finisher, all that. And the percentages were not bad last year as a shooter. Now, do we believe in him as a consistent catch and shoot guy if he's a, let's say, 15-minute a night player? I'm not sure that's the case. The volume was low enough last year that I'm not going to read too much into it. The mechanics do look a little better, but that is essentially the defining skill that he needs to bring, right? Even if he's a little above average, that will matter and teams will sag off of him in a playoff type setting. But to get regular season minutes, that's more than enough for him to get on the floor and offer everything else. And I said it earlier this week. The thing I really want to see, almost as much as the shooting, is the defensive discipline. Because I do think as much as I like the point of attack stuff, the ability to get through screens, his ability to go up and, he can make a weak side block at the rim and switch on to different guys. He's a little undisciplined. He can just fly by guys on closeouts and gets a little bit carried away, as a lot of young players do. So is that just a rookie Ricky Council thing, or is that how he's going to play in general? So that's the big question for me, along with the shot. If those things come along, we've already seen a body of work as a rebounder. He's a decent passer for his size. You're not going to rely on him for playmaking, but
that one
wrap
around
pass
the
in
corner.
San Antonio was unbelievable.
Nick Batum.
So
knocked
he's
it
got
down.
some passing skill. It's just a matter of, how often is he going to use that? I think mostly he will be a play finisher, and that's fine. He's good at that. He's going to help you in transition as well. You have to talk about like Jared McCain being a lane filler. Well, if Jared McCain is flying out to the wing and you have Ricky Council going to the rim, you got some tough choices to make as a defender. You want to, step in front of the freight train or get out to the guy who can shoot. So I really like Ricky still. I think he's got a bright future. I think eventually he will be, a regular NBA rotation player with some just incremental improvements. I'm not sure this year is the year he's going to see much time, though.
Yeah, no, I sort of mentioned that I was a little skeptical about the playing time earlier on, but there will be injuries. There will be opportunities to come out and show what he has. And if he makes the most of it, and if he is playing more within the scheme defensively, and he is making those catch and shoot shots, I looked it up while Kyle was talking. He made 40% of them last year. That was on such low volume that you don't read too much into it. But he did make very substantial progress in the form and the mechanics. Now, his starting point coming out of college was dreadful mechanically with the jumper. It's still not perfect, but it is certainly more repeatable than it ever was in college. So that's a good sign.
Yeah.
But it's going to take a little bit of time, I think, for coaches, and probably even more importantly for defenses, to really trust it and or fear it, depending on your perspective. He's just got to show it more. And I do think, like I said, because of his versatility, because of his physicality and the fact that he can compete, I think he will get chances sprinkled in throughout the year when players go down with injuries, or when you just want to extend the rotation because guys are playing heavy minutes, you're playing 4 games in 5 nights or what have you. Does he make the most of it? Does he seem like he has a full grasp of what Nick Nurse wants him to do defensively? And is he making his open shots? It's a pretty clear pathway for him to get minutes and to work his way into the rotation, even though it is crowded. And crowded with guys who are mostly, more experienced than him and older than him and more refined than him. And that's why I think all of us are fading a little bit the chance that he really breaks through into the rotation. But when he does get a chance, and quite frankly, I just want to see him up with the team a lot more this year.
Yeah.
We talked about, the G League and Delaware being a chance for McCain. I want to see Ricky around the NBA team most of the year, if for no other reason than to absorb. Like most of what he's got to work on, I think, is going to be well suited to happen up here in Philadelphia with the big club. So I'm pretty excited about the Rookie Council season, even if I don't expect him to be a regular part of the rotation. I think he might be a more consistent part of the rotation than Bona or McCain, even if not a regular part.
And to that point about the G League, I think what I would take away from his summer league, I don't think there's a lot to gain from playing Ricky down in Delaware at this point. Like he'll put up numbers and he'll be able to overwhelm competition there to a degree that's like, you're not actually probably working on the things that you need to work on the most, which is just being in, not necessarily standing in the corner, but making reads as more of a standstill player who's playing off ball, right? Like when to cut, when to stay, when to shoot, when to attack a closeout. Not like, hey, Ricky, like run a pick and roll at the top of the key with Bona and the G League. Like, I don't think that stands to benefit him that much because, look, we saw him in the G League. He was pretty damn good last year, and he's pretty damn good in summer league. Didn't necessarily shoot well. So I think the adjustment for him, and I agree with you, Derek, is finding that role that he can fill now. And if he becomes a good enough player to eventually, hey, we're going to give you the ball and let you run offense, let you come off of dribble handoffs and do different things, then that's great. But I think if he wants time this year, best case for him is he doesn't go to the G League and he's just around all the time to work on more of that specialized role.
It's one thing to play like that in summer league when it's like, all right, if you want to work on ISO Ricky a little bit, great. That's a great chance to experiment. But doing it for a full season with the G League, we saw with Paul Reed a couple of years ago, that can get them into some bad habits where they're still doing that kind of stuff and trying to self-create when they get up with the big club. And it's hard to get out of those habits back into a role player mindset. I just want him look, nobody puts Ricky in the corner, but stay in the corner for a little bit. You really work on your pre-shot footwork and mechanics. Get that catch-shoot shot down to the point where not only will you take it, but you'll take it relatively quickly. And cut off ball, like do all the things that he's going to have to do to get time early on in his career. And then he can worry about, after he's established himself, then he can worry about trying to expand that into a more featured role.
Go get him, Rick. Just go get him, Rick. I'm not even going to yell it. The thing,
save it for another day.
We can save that for another day, and people are already doing it in the chat. But look, the defense is what's going to earn him a spot on the floor when you're so down in the rotation or in the depth chart period, where we even talk about KJ Martin still being just above him right now before we even get to training camp and seeing any games, seeing how things play out. He still has a ways to go to prove to the coaching staff that he belongs on the floor. So the defense, again, just like KJ Martin, the defense, the effort, the energy plays, the 50-50 balls, all of that stuff, that's how he's going to get on the floor. And if he can get out there at that size, they decide they want to go heavy wing again when you take one of those other guys off the floor, and it's between he and KJ Martin, he gets the nod. He has to take advantage of any opportunity given to him by this head coach because he's a young guy. He has a short leash, and if he doesn't play well, as Kyle mentioned, it's a totally different team than it was a season ago where DeAnthony Melton and Robert Covington are down for 50-plus games, and you just can't count on them. So who do you lean on? You lean on these other two young guys that can step in and give you some minutes. In this particular case, it's not just the three starters at the wings, but they can get creative with Eric Gordon piece. You know how much he trusts the guard in terms of Kyle Lowry. Does he then also lean to someone like Reggie Jackson a little bit more, even as a smaller size, just in terms of how he wants to construct the lineup to put out on the floor on that particular night where he doesn't feel comfortable going to Ricky, and it still makes sense to go KJ Martin for a 4 spot for what we're talking about. So he's going to have to just go out there and do all of the stuff that we've seen him do to earn those minutes. And on the offensive end, outside of the shooting, as much as I liked how much the body control stuff we saw in the regular season, we saw it in Summer League, though, again, where you have that free reign to go, green light to do what you want to do. Some of that stuff will get you in trouble, though. It was fun last season because he earned the spot and earned the opportunity to get those minutes. This year, that's probably going to get him pulled off the floor if those don't fall and he's not getting a call from the official. He has to have better body control, better thought of what he's doing in those one-on-one situations and going up there and finish. And I have to imagine that even with that, they're trying to figure out a way where it doesn't look where he's taking those 2 elongated steps and then just hanging in the air for as long as he does and almost touching the floor and shooting.
He's very confident in that shot. I'll give him that.
But I'm guessing that Rico Hines and the rest of the coaching staff, Reggie Redding and those guys in the offseason are trying to change that just a little bit of a different type of finish than that one that's less likely to go in.
It's a different version of, I think, what was stressed to Maxey at one point by Rivers' staff, right? Where he was good at, and you want to use the runners and floaters, right? Like
yes.
For a smaller guard, that needs to be part of your game because sometimes you're going to run up against a 7'1" type of guy who will block your shot, and you have to disarm them in some way. And so Maxey's runners and floaters are valuable, but Doc Rivers and the rest of that staff was like, hey, we want you to get hand to glass a lot more often. You got to get all the way to the rim rather than settling for all these.
Especially with his athleticism.
Yes.
I'm not going to call it elite, but it's pretty damn good.
Well, the speed is definitely, top end speed is definitely elite. And I think as we see Tyrese's body maturing, he's getting bigger, he's getting stronger, that message rings home even more, right? Like you want him getting all the way to the rim because he can absorb the contact, go through it, get fouled. Just made an all-star team. You're assuming he's going to get some more calls. And so Ricky's version of that is, some of these where he's doing that long drag step and then taking a push shot. Yeah. You want him just going through guys. Like go to the rim, lower that shoulder into somebody's chest. And, you're going to pick up an offensive foul every once in a while because some guys are going to throw back and sell the contact. But I think by and large, Ricky will be able to create that separation, get to the rim. And that was one thing he's able to do last year. He got to the free throw line a decent amount when you consider how few minutes he was playing and how small his role was. So those are things he can bring right now without any further development to his game. So it really is just how much better can he be this year? And frankly, how good can he be in a role where he will have to do things that are not necessarily his strengths to get on the floor?
Because that layup off the glass, that layup right over the lip of the rim in the front, instead of falling backwards and very good at it, but being able to just simply finish right there at the rim, lay it up off the glass, that's going to be crucial for him. That's 2 points. That's not a maybe you get 2 points. That's at least 2 points. And if you get it on the rim, maybe there's an opportunity for somebody else for an offensive rebound, crashing, getting that board, especially if he's on the floor with Andre Drummond. An opportunity like
maybe
that.
some more rat passes to the corner like against San Antonio.
I don't know. He might. Andre Drummond might get jealous and try to make one of those passes.
Andre will catch it and then throw it behind the back or through the legs, or
yes.
I don't know. You
Come
never
on
know
the show,
with
Andre Drummond. We'll talk about that, and maybe we'll put the video off on the screen.
very much would like to have Andre on the show, because this is not the Andre Drummond or like the backup center show today, but I've said it all throughout the summer. I really have enjoyed watching his transition from, big money starting center type of guy, all-star level player, to he's a backup and really embraces it and has, it's easy to be like, oh, I get a ton of rebounds when I play 30 plus minutes and that's my skill. To come in a pretty specialized small role and you're still just getting like 8 to 10 rebounds in a small amount of time. He has committed himself to be as impactful in a bench role in that way as he was as a starter. So
his last 2 years have been the highest per possession rebounding rate of his career.
Yeah, he's been very good. I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like, and would love to talk to him about kind of his journey over the last.
Can't wait
few
to
years.
see him throw a lob to Ricky, because he's a guard at heart, man. Andre Drummond, he's a guard at heart. Come on the show.
I hope we only see like one of those.
Come on, Andre. Come on. We got to talk about that. We also need to talk about some of our friends. We'll get back. We'll talk about a few of these other younger players that need to, we need to talk about them a little bit with our friends, just a little bit. Hard hat time right here on the PHLY Sixers Podcast.
No hard hats on the set, but hard hats at home. Guys, Ace Hardware Home Services always has you covered. If you got a leaky pipe, Ace Hardware Home Services is around the block with everything you need to fix it, including the person who can do the fixing, because I know a lot of you shouldn't be doing work on your plumbing.
I should not.
Let's put it that way.
No,
there's a reason you hire a professional to work on the pipes in your house. You got an air conditioning issue? Ace Hardware has a person for that. You got a faucet? You said you'd fix it last fall. I can definitely relate to that. They've got that person too, because now they're not just the helpful hardware folks. They're also the helpful home service and repair folks. From plumbing to heating and cooling, Ace Hardware Home Services has the trusted pros to keep your home humming all year long. Ace Hardware Home Services, we're bringing helpful home, the helpful you love from the store, now to your front door. So visit Ace Hardware Home Services online at www.acehardarehomeservices.com to get you started on your next project. And let me tell you, once you become a homeowner, if many of you are not already, I hope that some of you do, there's always a next project. You think that you're done, another one begins, or another one is on the horizon.
You sit down and
go to our friends at Ace.
You're like, all right, I'm all good. Then there's the next one. By the way, Jay says, please no, LOL, on the Andre Drummond guard at heart. Please.
Oh, I mean, we saw him before. Like, there should be no surprises about this one.
It's fun. But you know what else is fun? Later on tonight, Phillies, Braves, Top Tomato with the crew. We've been talking about it. Live show and watch party. Jamie, Renee, Tyler, Philadelphia, Atlanta, going at it. It's going to be a fun game. Big series here, and the gang is there to talk about it at Top Tomato. $1 beers and $1 hot dogs all night. Yeah, you might as well do it on a Thursday. Take Friday off.
Thirsty Thursday, baby.
Take Friday off, man. Phillies ticket giveaways, merch and memorabilia giveaways, must RSVP for free to be eligible for the giveaways. You still have time at allphly.com/events. And one of the memorabilia, if it's that one that we had out there that I kept saying, this is dope. This one right here is dope. That is dope. I hope somebody wins that one tonight. and you will be very happy, and you'll probably know exactly what it is if you win it or if you attend. So please go out there, Top Tomato, PHLY crew there for the game, Atlanta versus Philadelphia. $1 beers, $1 hot dogs. Make sure you have some fun there. Also, we have to tell you, we are a week away from the start of the pro football season. And with that, the Birds. Yes, PHLY Eagles Watch Party live show at Tradesman's. That's next Friday, 8 days away, 8:15, Philly, Green Bay from Brazil. As the team goes over to Brazil, $40 ticket that you will have. It includes all-you-can-eat buffet, chicken tenders, mac and cheese, pulled pork sliders, waffle fries, pretzel bites. Got you covered. 3 drink tickets, Kyle. Miller Lite cans, Yards Brawler Draft.
Oh, hold on. No, we don't acknowledge other beers on this show. Sorry.
Scratch that. Well drinks as well, along with the Miller Lite. All right, scratch all of it, but go get it next Friday. Philly, Green Bay from Brazil, and you go hang out with the crew at Tradesman's again. 7 p.m. start off as they begin with the watch party. Everybody's going to be there enjoying it. And then they're also going to be giving out some tickets for the Eagles-Browns game as well. So we got some things going on out in the city. Phillies tonight,
so you can
Eagles
go boo
next,
that sex
next
offender,
Friday.
Deshaun Watson.
You know they're going to have some signs in the building. You know.
Good.
You know they are. You know they are. So make sure tickets, allphly.com/events. All right. Let's talk about some of the other young guys.
Where do you want to go next?
All right, real fast, just a quick one, because I know we probably have to get to Justin Edwards has been out there with the workouts. Do we include KJ Martin in that? Because he's still like a 4-year pro, hasn't played much.
I feel like he's outside of the group. He's in the group in terms of he's there in the pecking order. I don't really treat him as like a prospect though. So yeah. I'd say no. Look, I think KJ probably will play more than most, if not all, of these guys. I think last year you saw both what he can do and more what he can't do. He had some moments where you stick him in the dunker spot and hit him with some interior passing. Clearly has the hops to get up quickly, dunk it, finish, do that. If he had a reliable 3-point shot, I could see the case for him playing. I think the ship has sailed on that for me in terms of going into a season expecting it. And I think, frankly, he might need to play some like small ball 5 to really show what he can do. And I don't think that's really conducive to success. So, yeah, I mean, I think he's going to play. But I think he's with this group, despite the fact that he probably should have. Like, we don't consider Tyrese Maxey in this group, and he's a young guy. He has graduated past that group. So KJ still being in this mix says, I think that sums up kind of where we're at on him.
Yeah, and you wish that the 3-point shot was there. Heck, at this point, you trust Ricky shooting threes way more than you trust KJ Martin at this stage of their careers at this point. So He's a talented young player that can add some things. The small ball 5 part is interesting, but it's really about the hustle, being there in the right spots in the dunker spot, flashing when a space spot opens up there in the half court set, running the floor, finishing those plays in transition, and when he gets to the free throw line, making his free throws as well.
He was one of those guys where you looked at like his early career Houston numbers, like he's shooting mid-30s from 3, maybe there's a chance, and then you watch him and you're like, oh, that's why you don't take low sample size 3-point numbers and put any real value in them. I don't trust the shot. Without the shot, it's going to be tough for him to play a regular role. I do think he could be ahead of, like Kyle said, a number of these guys early on in the season because he does give you a little bit of athletic pop and defense. But he is the one where if he is playing, I mean, look, we're all going to be honest. None of us expect him to be on the team past February anyway because of his contract. But if he is and he's ahead of Ricky in the rotation, that's where I might start being like, hey, we should give Ricky a chance because at least if he pops, he has a chance of exceeding what KJ Martin, I think, can do.
Yep. All right. Speaking of the young guys, let's go to the local kid. 2-way contract and Justin Edwards. Seeing what he can do and given the opportunity, a lot of Delaware time as we talked about, but he is on a 2-way contract. And there's some interesting things there because of what he had in terms of prep, all the talk about him in the prep prep days here in high school at MOTEP. He goes to Kentucky. It doesn't work out as he would like, as maybe a top 15, a lottery pick going to that school. And he's still having to work his way up, but he does have a two-way contract for this basketball team.
Yeah, so I actually tweeted about these two-way guys earlier. I like the group that they have just on paper because they represent different things. Justin Edwards, to me, is the long-term, like, hope that he turns into something guy of the group, right? Guy has an NBA frame. He's got some skill to him, was a big-time player in high school, obviously. Got a little bit lost in the shuffle last year. So the key for him, I think, is going to be the shot early if he can get on the floor. But he does have a diverse enough skill set that if he can put it all, it's one of those right now where you have to squint a little bit. Like, he's not that good of a passer. He's not that good of a scorer. He's not an elite type shooter, but he's good enough at enough things. Like, he's not an elite ball handler. He's not an elite athlete, but he's above average in a lot of areas, both physically and skill wise. And so if he can turn even one of those, like if he becomes an elite shooter, if he becomes just a consistent source of offense off the bench, if he can defend at a good level to supplement all of that stuff, then he goes from, okay, he's probably like, I think he'll be a quad A-ish player, but he can graduate from there to NBA guy with a step forward in one of those departments. I think, honestly, if we're looking at the two-way type players, the guy who would play is Jeff Dowtin. I think he's very clearly, because he's much older and has been in the pros for a while, he's very clearly the most polished of those guys. I think when you saw him at Summer League, it almost was like, what is he even doing out here? He clearly is the most put together and realized player of those. He really is that. If there's such a thing as a quad A player in basketball, he is it, because he's way too good to be playing in the G League. But at the NBA level, it's like, he's just kind of a caretaker guard type of guy. Will settle for a lot of mid-range shots. Is not a great outside shooter, but I think given that Nick Nurse has shown trust in him, given that he's staying in the organization for another year, I would guess if any of these guys get a real crack, it's Dowtin, because he's already proved he can play in the league, even if it's in short bursts.
I just want to mention how much it tickles my heart for Kyle to be using baseball analogies. I absolutely love it. Love it. Quad A baseball player. I think that's a great way
you
to
can make good
Dowtin.
analogies and still have a bad sport, right? Through the wickets is an analogy, but I don't watch that sport.
Going back to Edwards, the shooting is obviously a big swing skill. To me, the bigger concern is getting to his spots off the dribble. And I think that's a combination of first step, which is average-ish. He's got good length, but average first step.
Yeah.
And handles, which slow him down. And obviously, it's easier to get by. People are guarding you on the perimeter, so that factor into each other. But I just don't trust him right now to get. Do you remember when we were at out in Vegas? Who was he trying to take off? Do you remember who was trying to take off the dribble? And he went like 8 straight times.
Are you talking about in
one-on-one.
practice?
Yeah.
It was an
and
assistant
he got
coach,
walled
I'm pretty
up
sure.
every time, to the point where it was almost tough to watch. And when you go back and you watch him at Kentucky, I think a big part of his problem is that he just could not get to his spots like he could in high school. So for me, the big question is, can he figure out a way to first develop that jump shot and then use that to leverage driving lanes and tighten up his handle to the point where he can take his average first step with a good shot and then get to the spots like he needs to. Until that happens, I think there could be some, especially if he goes down to the Delaware and he tries to be a number one option, there could be some growing pains. He has some talent. He's got good size. The shooting made some progress. But I think in order to really, really, really be the type of player that he wants to be, he's got to be an elite shooter, and he's got to work on his handle a little bit.
Yeah, and the other guy that we talk about on the two-way, the David Jones thing that no one talks about with David Jones, just a guy who can score the basketball in college hoops, and now he's up here. He had a couple of good games once we left Las Vegas, and kind of
ended up shooting like
40%
40% from three in Summer League.
And when you speak about going to the G League and probably having some success, he's one of those guys that you putting the ball on the floor, the outside shooting, another lefty. He is going to be the one that probably, if given the minutes alongside Jared McCain and some of the other guards down there, He's going to be the one because he knows how to score the basketball. And
he's
in
a
that type
good
of
rebounder for his size. Like people talk about McCain.
6'3", 6'4", 6'3"?
So I actually was talking with somebody about this. I looked it up earlier. He's 6'3.5" without shoes. So let's say 6'4.5", 6'5", depending on the type of sneaker that you're wearing, I suppose. But he was averaging like 7 rebounds a game in college. And I think he probably grabbed at Summer League like 5 or 6 a game. He gets in there and he will battle with people. So I like that from, he's not a guy that anyone views as like a playmaker as a guard. And so you're going to have to do something else other than scoring. Like the scoring is great, but it's like, but what else? If he rebounds, especially on this team that has such a potential need for rebounding, I'm not saying that's the reason he would play, but David Jones said, that gives you some utility. It gives you a path to, hey, I can get on the floor and I can help even if shots aren't falling and I'm not the focal point of the offense. So, I think I'm not expecting him to play. I think he'll be a strictly G League guy if I had to guess.
Up the G League.
But I think in the G League, he's going to put up some big numbers if I had to guess.
Definitely. He had a nice dunk, too, at the end of Summer League.
No, I mean, the question for him is twofold. Kyle mentioned he's not really a creator. So that limits your utility as a primary focal point. But the shot, like that last year at Memphis, it was such a huge jump in his 3-point shot. Is that real? Can you count on that? And then the defensive consistency. Like from what I remember watching at Memphis, he has the tools to be a pretty good defender. I know his steals numbers are pretty good, but on ball, off ball, he could fall asleep at times. Yeah. Can you get him to the point where he's consistently making the most of his physical attributes on that end of the court? I have certainly more interest in David Jones long-term than I think I do Justin Edwards. I think he has...
I actually think I agree with you. I think he just seems like a better basketball player. And granted, big age gap, I think, between them, right? Like David Jones is probably like
22.
I was going to say 22, 23. I'd have to go back and double check what his actual age is. Whereas Edwards has a lot of time to develop and grow. But I don't know. I think David Jones is a pretty realized player in the scoring department. And if he shoots the way he did last year in Memphis, he's a real NBA player. It's just, to Derek's point, does that translate to the new line? Can you buy in that part of the sample size? Because it was a new development. He was not a good shooter, at least an outside shooter, for most of his career.
Sean Ford in the chat says, was trying to see McCain off ball because that's what he'd be in the NBA off of Embiid and others. And every time down, he had the ball and it was sticking to him. Couldn't tell McCain off ball as much in the Summer League.
Yeah. Hey, so he was talking about Doughton. I think he's referring to Doughton had the ball a lot.
Right,
and so that's
right.
There were a couple comments there referring to that. So that was one of my issues with Doughton there was like, on the one hand, you want an organizer, right? Someone you can give the ball and he'll do what you need to. But I agree. There was a lot of like, it's Jeff Doughton time in Summer League, which is, if you're trying to win the game, is fine. But if you're trying to, see what Jared McCain or some of these other guys have, maybe not as useful.
All right. Well, that'll pretty much do it for the young guy. Well,
we left out.
Did you want to?
Adem Bona. Yeah, I
thought you guys mentioned it a little bit. So
we mentioned him, but barely.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's. By the way, real time with the super chat. I don't know when this came from or what it was referring to. It says Delilah's called Derek left his wallet yesterday. So.
I have photographic proof.
Flat tire, Derek. Sure.
I have
That's why you missed
on the internet yesterday. Of where I got my flat tire. It was not there. I know real time you're a man of culture, but that is not true.
So Adem Bona.
Yeah.
I think he is almost exactly what we expected based on what he showed at UCLA. Plays hard, runs hard, blocks a ton of shots, commits a lot of fouls, has no hands. And it's really like, what is going to give first? Like, will his hands improve? I will say that's one of the things that I just do not believe gets better in the NBA. Like, there are very few guys that I can remember coming out of school, couldn't catch the ball consistently. And then all of a sudden it's like, boy, he's got stickum on his hands. Like, I think if you have bad hands, you just kind of have bad hands.
I'm still waiting for Nerlens to learn how to catch. I'm still waiting.
I don't think it's as bad as with Nerlens, partially because he's a second round guy and you don't have to, you don't have the expectations of a top 10 pick. But really, like, if he can just, even if he doesn't catch it, if the ball gets thrown up in the air toward the rim and he just like pushes it down. That's all he's going to have to do to score, because he's an incredible vertical athlete. Like he's going to get up there and go above basically anyone. I love his energy. I will tell you, one of the things I love watching the Rico Hines runs, he's super animated and competitive, even in those where those games do not lend themselves to big men in general. Like it's, even if they're more organized than Drew League, the Rumpf, etc., it can be a little scattered. But he's coming out of possessions like they were playing a game on the most recent video that was posted, and he's like, "Now we need to get a stop." He's like yelling at all these guys, and they cut it right before, I'm sure he said, "MFing stop." And so I love seeing that fire from him. That tracks with what the word on him was coming out of school, that the people around him, like, he's an ultra competitor, someone you want in the locker room. So I think he's going to end up playing some at least spot minutes this year when Joel misses a game or they rest him, whatever it might be. And he might play 10 to 15 minutes behind Drummond, or maybe they use Yabusele there a little bit. We'll see. But yeah, I think it's going to be a roller coaster ride with him. We'll have some big moments, and the rest of the time it'll be, yeah, that sure is a young big man out there.
So when you talk about him you talked about both Maxey and McCain with their character, that's another one with Adem Bona.
Yes.
The hardworking thing that comes with him when you speak to people, and even when you talk to him, he knows he says it. He just wants to get better. He knows what he has to get better at. He wants to get better at. He's going to continue to work to do that. And even in those short conversations that we were able to have with him, tend to believe the guy, just again, because of the character and who he is and how hard he works. So if he does, he has, and someone called him, I can't remember, Habib called him Reggie Evans 2.0. If you can get Reggie Evans 2.0 and just simply rebounding the basketball,
if Reggie Evans could protect the rim, he would have been a much different player too. So.
But he was valuable for what he did with the rebounding and helping out and making sure to secure those possessions in that way. Yeah. This guy's more of an athlete. And if he can add that and protect the basket like Kyle is talking about, they may have found something with that second-round pick. And he is an interesting one as well. A lot of time in the G League, of course, but he'll have those days where he plays the 1 o'clock game. And he's up here for the 7 o'clock game in South Philadelphia for the 76ers because of they want to see a lot of them, and maybe Joel sitting out and Andre Drummond starting.
When he has a couple good games, there will certainly be fans who are a Bona build.
There you go. Got to start that one. Start yelling it out, though. So
I have a T-shirt idea that needs to be sold at some point if he's good. So I'm not going to reveal it on the show.
Yeah, and we still have the one that we have to get done. We'll get that one done. We'll get that one done.
We got some merch ideas, Devon and I.
Yes. Look at us.
Hopefully coming down the pipeline.
Look at us.
You never know.
Look at us. We can save the other stuff for tomorrow that we had. We had quite a few other things that we wanted to tackle around the association. So we want to say
Lonnie Walker to Boston. There was an extension for staff. So we might do like a little, grab bag type of show tomorrow heading into the holiday weekend.
Absolutely. So before we step away from all of you in the chat on YouTube and Roku, it's time for our roll call.
Hey.
The world famous roll call, Derek.
Hey,
world famous.
with the graphic. Shout out to all our people in here. As always, thank you for spending part of your day with us. Thank you too. Got to go first to Darkness.
Whoa. Turn the lights down.
Rick Morse, Habib 215, Mr. Sandman, Real Time with Prince Blue.
Thank you for the super chat.
Eugene Ross,
what up,
king of Comcast and the exclamation point. We got Sean Sharp, Jay of the Jungle hanging out today.
Good to see you, Jay.
What's up to Jay? We got Money Mar. We have Just Jay.
What up, Jay?
What's up, Jay? Who said, ain't nobody touching my pipes earlier, which I laughed at that one pretty hard. We'll just leave that one there. My girl Winona was in here.
Hey, Nona.
Jeffrey Stewart is here. Val Host, what's up to Val, who's in here today?
She said she had the shirt on today.
Hey,
they just communicate.
We don't
know.
Sean Ford hanging out with us today.
What up,
PHLY hanging out with us today. Prophet One. I'm pretty sure Bootzilla was in here at some point. Oh, there's a lot of you in here today. Jess with the purple heart.
Yes.
Voo Drew. Ooh, that's a new one I haven't seen. Okay. Shout out to Voo Drew.
All right.
Thank you to everybody. How about Vinsanity714 before we get out of here?
Some windmill dunks.
Hit subscribe. Hit the bell icon so you get notifications each and every time we go live. Hit the thumbs up. We'll be back tomorrow.
Thank you,
3 p.m.
Bree.
Thank you, Bree.
See ya.
City like the mayor.